ink up here, you have your letters in here, and then of course you put the paper in here, and then of course you turn it and it works by pedal power, like a sewing machine would. See, the rolls go up, they get inked up, they come down and ink up the letters. You put a piece of paper in there and press it. When it was done, you take the paper out, and there it is. Please don't shoot the piano player. He's doing the best he can.
That's a great.
All right, let's go down here. 70s. I even have a newspaper from that period of time, the Daily Territorial Enterprise. It, like most newspapers of its day, was only 4 pages long. Now, in a big city like New York or London, their newspapers might be as many as 8 pages. Look at the size of that type. You probably need a magnifying glass or microscope to read that. And imagine if you had to set type for this newspaper. Letter by letter, word by word, line by line, paragraph by paragraph, column by column, and page by page. That's an hour. One person could do a half a column in half a working day. Otherwise, it took between 50 and 60 men half the working day just to set type for this. Now, why half the day? Well, what would they do the other half of it? Well, then they would, of course, take it out to be printed, right? And when they were finished printing it, guess what they had to do the rest of the working day? Take out each of one of these letters, clean them off, and put them back. And then they had to do the same thing for the next day's edition. Yeah, old God is right. Now, this newspaper is very interesting. You may notice it was printed in Virginia City, Nevada, February of 1872. Well, there was a reporter who worked on the newspaper at this time. He was a man by the name of Samuel Clemens. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he later went to California and wrote about the jumping frogs of Cavaleras County, and then he wrote a couple of novels called Huckleberry Finn and Tom Sawyer. You know him by his pen name. Who wrote Huckleberry Finn and Tom Sawyer? Mark Twain. He worked for this newspaper. Now, here's an interesting thing, a proof press. You folks proofread your papers before you turn them in school?
Yeah.
Well, all right, here's a proof press. What you do, well, you do the same thing with newspapers. You put your letters down, you put your ink over it, right? You roll your ink over it, and you put a piece of, well, actually, I'm sorry, you put your letters down, you roll ink on it, then you put a piece of paper down on it, you roll over it, and there it is. We get ourselves a copy. Not perfect, but as long as it's legible, as long as it's readable, and then you could read it and see if anything needed to be, any corrections needed to be made, any changes had to be made. Now, there's a very, very interesting story behind this proof press. If you could read upside down, it says here, Miles Nervine. And if you look way down there, I don't know if you can see it from where you're standing, it says Miles Pain Pills. Well, back in Elkhart, Indiana, lived a Dr. Frederick Miles. He produced this medicine, Miles Restorative Nervine. He said it would cure your ills and calm your nerves. Well, it would calm your nerves all right. Guess what half of it was? Alcohol. That will calm your nerves all right. I don't know if it'll cure your ills, but it will calm your nerves. Well, he had a great idea. His company had a great idea how to sell his medicine. Well, they had connections with it was called a foundry, an ironworks back in Elkhart, Indiana, and they produced these proof presses for the Miles Laboratories. Well, what would happen is they'd send their salesmen, when they go out in small towns and villages in the West and Midwest, and the first place their salesmen would go to would be the local newspaper office, and they would talk to the editor or publisher, and they would offer them one of these proof presses for free, in exchange for free advertising from Miles Restorative Nervine. As a result, he was able to sell thousands and thousands of bottles of Nervine.
Is this an actual bottle?
Yeah, it's the real stuff. You see it.
Sir, do you still sell it?
No, oh no, I'll tell you about that in a little while. So they were able to sell thousands and thousands of bottles of Nervine. Yeah, we call it snake oil today. And they were still selling this stuff up into 1929, which which was, oh my goodness, almost 80 years ago, when my mother was born. And there it is. There's your before picture. There is your after picture. You see how happy she is once she's had her nervine? And happy. Yeah, well, you asked if they still sell it. Well, there was a problem. You see, the Food and Drug Administration said, excuse me, fellas, you know that there's a little too much alcohol in your nervine. You better stop making it. So, Miles Laboratory stopped making nervine, and then they started making another product, Alka-Seltzer for upset stomachs. Produced by Miles Laboratory of Elkhart, Indiana. No, Alka-Seltzer is very, very different. Matter of fact, you can use for if you have an upset stomach. Pepto-Bismol is another one, but for heartburn, it's another thing you can use. Baking soda. Baking soda and water will work. Yeah. Yeah. Well, baking soda has a lot of great uses.
And also
And what else?
not for
All right. Now, we're around 1870. We get a new invention. I'm sure you folks know what those are. Yes, the typewriter. Good. No, I have to ask that question. I'm not trying to be a smart aleck, but I hope you know what a typewriter is. Of course, you don't use one anymore, do you? Right. And yeah, that's right. Yeah, antique stores. Well, you know what? When I was growing up, everybody had typewriters. Matter of fact, until maybe 15 years ago, 15 to 20 years ago, people still used typewriters. Of course, what happened is word processors and computers came in. See, a lot of things we took for granted growing up with in the 20th century, like a typewriter or a movie projector or a phonograph, all became obsolete, all went out of use by the time you folks were born. Well, anyway, typewriter. If you're good at it, it's faster than writing by hand, and it's much neater. Why not use the same technology to invent a way to type cast letters? So in the late 19th century, there